Welcome to the Wisdom and Wealth Coach of the Month podcast series. And I am here with Wendy Hummell, who I have had the great pleasure of seeing transition into yoga health coaching on the background of a 25-year law enforcement career. And Wendy has spent the majority of her working career working person crimes investigations in homicide, gang, and sex crimes units. And during her career, she's had a lot of experience working in stress management and defense tactics within her teams. And Wendy has taught at the level of academy and national conferences, not just on her scope of practice within crime scene, but also related topics to her now current role as Officer of Health and Wellness, Peer Support and Resiliency. So Wendy, congratulations on this great honor of Coach of the Month Yoga Health Coaching. You are currently working as a wellness coordinator. I just want to congratulate you for doing such important work. Tell us a little bit about your experience in working for first responders and how that has shaped where you're at today, personally and professionally.
Sure. Well, first of all, I really want to say thank you for selecting me. It's quite the honor in this really awesome community. I was actually kind of shocked, to be honest with you, when you guys told me. So I really appreciate this. But for me, this was just a natural progression. It wasn't anything that I ever planned. If you would have asked me 5 years ago that I would have seen myself as a yoga health coach, I would have said, well, what is that? But yeah, I've been in law enforcement for 25 years. For me, it was my dream job. I always knew from a young age that was the job I wanted to do. And during the course of my career, as you mentioned, I always just wanted to be a detective. I didn't aspire to be a supervisor. And that really came early on from being inspired by shows like, the Bionic Woman and Wonder Woman, like the old school Wonder Woman with Linda Carter and things like that. But really, I just wanted to serve in some way. And that was what I felt, that's what I was drawn to. And I loved every minute of it. But the one thing that back when I went through the academy 25 years ago that they never really taught you was the flip side of the job, the negative aspects of it, you see so much trauma, you're exposed to so much secondary trauma, there's the environment, you don't get a lot of sleep sometimes, you get called into work and all those sorts of things that go along with the work, although it's really rewarding. And so for me, I started to personally notice things with my own health and mental, physical, emotional things. I actually had problems conceiving. I had some miscarriages, which I never pieced together that could have anything to do with my lifestyle until really being in this program, kind of like a light bulb went on. And then I also started to notice and observe my coworkers, my brothers and sisters, as we call each other. They also were struggling with some other things as well. And so it really inspired me, I would probably say about 7 years ago, to shift my focus and really want to start serving the people that I work alongside with, and really just trying to heal myself. And that really started with a yoga and meditation practice. And then just learning all I could about resiliency and trauma and things of that nature. I became a yoga teacher. I decided to teach yoga to the people that I work with. And I went through a program called Yoga for First Responders. And so all of that kind of was what was happening prior to me discovering YHC and really Kate and her podcasts. And I feel like this is just very similar to what I hear everybody else say, is I feel like I was kind of stalking Kate for a little bit. She was kind of my mentor that she probably didn't, she had no idea who I was, but Ayurveda was the missing piece for me. I learned about it in my 500-hour yoga training. And then that was kind of the missing piece. Once I put it all together, that was what really sealed the deal for me with my health. Lots of digestive issues, which I understand, that's how my stress showed up in my body. And then to hear that Ayurveda was the root of health, and that's what the focus was, it personally helped me tremendously. And so again, just like anything else I've done when it comes to all of these things, I decided that I needed to learn more. And then of course, at some point, after talking to you several times, I felt like this is something that the people that I know would benefit from too. So that's kind of a quick version of where I landed, where I am.
I love it. And if you think about those early shows that inspired you, Wendy, it's like there's always the villain, and then there's always like the hero. And you can think of the villains as all of that chaos, all of that uncertainty and complexity and vulnerability and ambiguity that you face in serving in that role of duty. And I love it that you've kind of cracked the code. And Ayurveda is certainly all about rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have a dysrhythm in a profession where there's shift work, there's trauma, there's what else would you say? How would you describe the dysrhythm?
There's so much. You hit the most kind of glaring ones, but yeah, shift work, overtime right now with first responders. And I don't think it's just limited to first responders. There's a lot of shortages, manpower shortages. And so just having to work extra shifts, a lot of people in our work environment feel unsupported by the community and even by the people that they work for, depending on the circumstances or work with. So there's so many layers to it. It's not just the work in and of itself and the calls and the difficulty of what you see. And it's a little bit different for different people. And over the last few years, obviously, we've got all these added things that have happened with COVID and as law enforcement, just being told all these different things and having to navigate, well, we're supposed to wear masks. What do we do if people aren't wearing masks? Like just all this. And I'm not trying to jump into anything political, but just the not knowing how to navigate these things from their perspective. So,
yeah. And so then think, of the hero that comes in, which is deep rhythm. And it's not about purity or perfection, but doing the best that you can to lead the best life while doing your best work. Tell us a little bit about that, because that seems to be your wheelhouse. Mindfulness, resiliency, building meaningful relationships, exercise, sleep, nutrition, wellness, peer support, job performance. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm interested to hear from you on that.
Okay. Well, yeah. So when I retired, I retired and that was about 3 years ago. I turned 50 and then retired from a 21-year career as a detective. And before I retired, I had been doing some of these things at my former agency, trying to get a wellness program started, teaching yoga, meditation, and mindfulness. I got a grant for some resiliency training. And it seemed at the time, as you can imagine, it wasn't received the way it is received now because it was something new. And especially in the first responder world, change is very slow to happen. But nonetheless, there were a lot of people that were very interested. And then I was approached by another law enforcement agency that was interested in doing more and creating a wellness program. And so all of those things that I had already been doing, it was really honestly just like a dream job and opportunity, able to just put all of these things together and package it. Not just me, but really getting a collaboration, which is something that's been so helpful in YHC, is to really use the collaborative mesh network to really get input from all of these different facets of the agency and really the community to develop this. But, and just putting it all together to see what would best serve the people at the agency. And so that's something that I've been doing for the last several years. And you mentioned some other things. The very first thing that I did when I started this position a few years ago is I wrote a grant, which I'd never done before, so that we could start a peer support program, which is another thing that really appealed to me about YHC, is that group dynamic peer support, because I have seen the power of peer support and it's what I do a lot of the time. And putting like-minded people together, people who share similar, experiences and backgrounds, and coming together and really understanding each other. And so that's the very first thing that I was tasked with doing, and training peer support, getting people to come in and train us on that, and supporting the people within the agency. and letting them know it's okay to connect with others and share resources in the community if somebody needs help or their family needs help. So that was the first building block of the program. And then you mentioned some other things that we are building out, talking about resilience training from the academy level with recruits all the way through people's careers. So they have this information that I really, truly wish I would have had 25 years ago. I think it would have been very beneficial to know some of these things ahead of time instead of figuring them out. But I guess that's the way it goes. And just all of these things like you were talking about, exercise, and, good relationships, sleep, and just really trying to impart that on people in a way where, everyone knows you need to sleep. Everyone knows you need to eat a certain way, but packaging it in a way where people can understand it. And it's, that Kaizen approach, small incremental change, giving people just little nuggets and tidbits about how they can incorporate this, especially when they're in this line of work where it's not as easy as people who have day jobs.
Yeah, let's talk about the packaging for a moment. So here you are, having traveled, 7 years on this journey. There's been a lot of great collaboration. You've co-created a lot of the structure, the strategy for helping people with well-being. And so in terms of packaging, you made the decision to enroll into yoga health coaching. Mm-hmm. And packaging is really the top one reason why a lot of experts, such as yourself, get into yoga health coaching. So please do share what has been a solution for you through yoga health coaching in regards to packaging and how you've been able to integrate that into a business model under your own company that has potential for future retirement plans.
Yeah, sure. And I want to start out by saying that I never really imagined that being in YHC would help me at all in my full-time position. Like, I thought the two things were going to be completely separate. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, my thinking was that, hey, this has really worked for me. This is something I'd like to try to really see if I can make this work, and not just teach yoga and meditation, but offer something a little bit more holistic and well-rounded. And so that's really why, for, I think it was about a year, I thought about joining. But for me, I'd been, it was the money. Even though I had money, I had retirement savings, it was a scary, for me to think about spending $15,000 on a coaching program was kind of outrageous. But now I think about it, I'm like, I wish I would have done it a long time ago. It doesn't seem like it's that much at all now that I've seen all the rewards and the benefits that I've gotten and other people have gotten. So that's really where it came from, is being able to see, okay, now I have all of these things in place. This is kind of the missing link. Like, this is what I have been waiting for, because at one point I considered going back to school and getting another master's degree and becoming a therapist, because I felt like there was something more that I wanted to do in a way I wanted to serve. But that I never jumped in. And now I kind of understand why, because this is what feels right for me, is this holistic approach. And I thought, let me see if I can give this a try. But it was scary, because although I have experience teaching and training and I feel comfortable in that role, I know nothing about being an entrepreneur and marketing and sales and all of those things that go along with it. So that's what I was looking for with YHC. Never did I imagine the leadership and just unpacking things about me personally, understanding my limiting beliefs and how that impacted what I did and didn't do, was really, really helpful. And it's rippled out and impacted the way I do my job at work. So these things are not mutually, nothing can be just compartmentalized. It helped in so many different aspects, all aspects of my life, really.
Yeah. How do you put a value on that, do you think? When we talk about results, rewards, I like to look at it as return on investment, because as you say, it's a big leap of faith to invest in yourself. And at the end of the day, that is a competency of successful people that some people just find very difficult, because we're not inherently trained to do that.
Right.
And so, if you look at, there's a return on investment for tuition now that you've finished. Tell us a little bit about the first quarter of your pilot, including like everything that you just mentioned, the marketing, the sales and enrollment process, the customer delivery.
Okay. So first of all, I'll tell you that, my husband and I were both retired law enforcement. He works part-time. We have younger children. We started our family late for a variety of reasons. Some of it, were because we had issues, and others was because of the type of work we did. So, we do everything together. We have a very strong relationship. It's gotten even better since I've been in YHC, I'll tell you that. But he has been a tremendous support, not just in supporting me in everything that I do, but what I mean is behind the scenes, he's helping me because I have a full-time job. And when I told him what I wanted to do, when I considered YHC, I said, listen, I think I can't really do this by myself because I realized that I have a full-time job in our family. So this was kind of a package deal. Like, he supports me a lot behind the scenes with a lot of things. So there's that, first of all. And then, just like you said, just really understanding and learning all of these things, what were very new to me. It was really scary for me, quite honestly, because throughout my entire career, I've never had to sell myself, if that makes sense. And it felt awkward. It was uncomfortable for me to say, yeah, I'm doing this and I'm, doing this program. Do you want to join, or do you want to find out about it? It felt like kind of slimy. And I know you hear that all the time with sales. But when I really started to look at it like, well, how is this any different than teaching something that you believe in? It's a service. And I really feel that way now. Like, now I'll explain it and I'll tell people what I'm doing. And I think that really makes a difference because I truly believe that what I'm doing makes a difference. And now that I have gotten through Q1 with 8 people, we just finished this morning. And I've been able to witness, although you hear this all the time in YHC, and you hear people talk about how impactful it's been to the clients in their program. Once you go through it yourself and you've experienced it, you know it to be true, and it just kind of builds on itself. And to hear people in my program talk about things, it's just that's been very helpful for me too. And it just becomes easier. I don't have to force it. The right people, I feel like, find it. And there's that kind of balance between, because I'm Pitta, and so I'm very driven, and I've forced and burned myself out quite a bit. And I've realized, there's a fine balance between, putting the gas on, and then backing off, like kind of knowing that when to kind of work a little bit and then when to ease off. So that's been something I've learned throughout this process too. And it really seems to be working out the way it's supposed to. I've got 3 more people starting in Q2, potentially 1 more. And that's just the perfect amount for me. I'm really anxious in a good way to see how that integration works, because I've never experienced that. So, all of it is really just following the steps. I know people say that all of the time and they want some big insight, but just really listening to what Kate says, jumping on as many calls as you can, and really using the community, because I didn't do that the first few months. I said, I'll just do this by myself like I've normally done. And then I'm like, nope, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to reach out and get some accountability partners. And that really made a big difference for me.
Absolutely. And do you notice for your own members, the dynamic group experience, which you have skills by the learn and do? Like, yoga health coaching is you learn it and you do it, and you take action steps weekly. Tell us a little bit about that, and how now like what has shifted in your beliefs and attitudes around dynamic group work.
Well, and I was always a believer in dynamic groups because I experienced that with peer support, and I'm only convinced more and more when I do things at work, and then of course YHC. And what's interesting is what I really like about the strategy session model, like doing one-on-ones with people and before they enroll, is you get to know them. And every single person, everyone has mentioned in some form or fashion the connection piece. There's a lot of other things that are important to them as well, but the connection piece, like having support of other people, is what seems to be severely lacking. And that's really what I think, is the common denominator with people joining the group, is that those weekly get-togethers. And I've had, had a member tell me just this morning that they hadn't been able to come to a few live calls, and that made them feel very disconnected. And they're really anxious to jump back in. And, life happens. They can always watch the recordings, but that connection piece is what seems to really make the magic happen, for lack of a better way of saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of your growth and development moving forward, you now have a pretty robust structure. And how are you going to leverage that structure and the systems that you've built to live your best life moving forward? What does that vision look like?
So for me, I told myself for this first year, I was going to just work the system, and I'm about to go into mastery. And so just continuing on these next couple rounds and doing what I've been doing, doing some free talks. I do webinars on a platform called Justice Clearinghouse. And that seems to be able to, helps me. It wasn't the original intention of why I do that. It was something I do through work. But what just makes people aware of the kind of work I'm doing, because it is a little bit unique. When you're in the criminal justice world, a lot of people are like, no, what is that? So just continuing that, continuing to put it out there and let people know what I do for now. And then besides what I'm doing with YHC, before I joined YHC, I had a podcast I had launched, and I also have a yoga retreat. Years ago, I knew I wanted to be able to host events for first responders in a really peaceful setting. And so for several years, my husband and I looked for land, and everything just kind of fell into place. So I've got this yoga retreat. It's about 30 minutes from my house. And I've got this space. I've started to offer retreats. And actually I've kind of been able to offer that as part of my annual pass. So people who join can do that. So there's all these different things that have just naturally come together. And so all of those things are what I'm looking for in the future. I mean, I love my full-time job, but I'm 53. I've already retired once. And after the next couple of years, I'm going to probably move on and just want the freedom of being my own boss and doing, the work that I'm doing and continuing it.
Yeah. And every time you grow your capacity, now that you've conquered a lot of those challenges and fears of entrepreneurship, and to me, those anxieties and fears are validation that you're in the right spot and that you're growing and that this is where you're meant to be. So as you have moved through the phase of implementing the business model, which is all about year one of yoga health coaching. And we do have that second year of support. And the reasons why we have that second year is so that we can help you scale, and you get to determine what that looks like. So what I'm hearing is that there's an opportunity to cast your net a little wider through having the retreats not only accessible to the membership package, but also perhaps to the broader community. And continuing to be visible on those platforms is exactly, you're exactly in the right direction there. How does that feel now to be visible, and are you enjoying it? Are you having fun with it?
Yeah, it's good. It was uncomfortable at first because it was hard at first, but now I find that I'm just being a little bit more, or a lot more, genuine and authentic, because I guess a big stumbling block for me, quite honestly, and really only in the last 6 months or so have I really just been able to put it out there, is that, being in the law enforcement world, especially being a woman, and then already talking about yoga and meditation, people find that could be a little off-putting. That has definitely changed over time. And for people who know me, not so much. So that's always been something in the back of my mind. And then just trying to navigate like the two worlds, almost like, the first responder world and the yoga, Ayurveda, like all of those other things, right? And figuring out how the two can connect. My husband and I have had so many discussions on the website. And do you talk about, because my podcast is called Guns and Yoga. And that's because it's a first responder wellness related podcast, but I also talk about yoga and meditation and how that can help. So that's just an example of my, kind of my two worlds together, and how do I package all of that? And so just recently, I'm just like, hey, I've been told I'm the most woo-woo cop somebody ever knew. And I'm okay with that. Like before I'd be like, oh, like I'm not comfortable with that, but that's who I am. And so just embracing who I am, I just put it out there and not really worrying like I used to about what people think, if that makes sense.
And that's a great shift, because that only helps people who need you to find you.
Yeah.
And I think we all resonate with the peer group that you, as a wellness, with strong convictions and beliefs for health and wellness, which may include yoga and meditation, that we do get put into a category that is a little woo, described as woo-woo. And it's great. I like you, Wendy, love to wear that as a badge of honor, because I know at the end of the day, with inflammation such a big problem amongst our peers, that they know that they can get curious about all that woo-woo stuff. And I think at the end of the day, when the friction is high enough, people will open to hearing what you have to offer, which is great. What's the biggest challenge next for yourself?
Challenge next. Let me think about that for a second. I want to say one quick thing about what we were just talking about. So the thing about the woo-woo part is I've always been a very practical, like I want to know why I'm doing something. And so that's the way I've always been. And I like the fact that you've got this stuff that's classified as woo-woo, but there's science and evidence to back it up. And I love how that's such a big part. That's another thing that attracted me to Kate's program, is that that's what she's like. She's able to say, here, we've got all this. I love the balance between yoga philosophy and incorporating that with Ayurveda and then circadian rhythm science. It makes it so much easier. It's just to be able to package it when I'm talking to people who may not want to hear that language. So I wanted to say that because I really appreciate that about the program, because it's just in line with how I do things and how I prefer to talk to people. The challenge, it's always a challenge for me, quite honestly, personally, is to do time management, because I have all these great things that I'm working on. But what I have learned to do, and I'm going to continue to do this, is, to stream out the things that are not the focus of where I want to be, if that makes sense. Like, just because I can do something doesn't mean I should do it. So just really focusing on the things that I know are going to get me to where I want to be. So
amen to that. I think we can all take a piece of that and feel that close to our hearts. I was actually going to ask you, Wendy, have you got one word of advice to anybody thinking about leveraging the transformational journey, the business model, yoga health coaching? We have a lot of listeners sitting on the fence, or perhaps curious to learn more. We have our Lead the Journey program. Any words of wisdom for anybody who's considering this shift into leading a journey?
The first, just do it. I guess Nike's already coined that phrase, but really, I mean, I understand the hesitation because I was there. But it's been such a life-changing thing for me. Like, even if I didn't make any money, and I'm not saying that it's not important to me to get reimbursed or make my money back, but the benefits that I've gotten personally have far outweighed any kind of money that I've spent. But of course, I do want to be able to earn money for what I'm doing. But really also, not comparing yourself to other people, and knowing that it's your own journey and each one of us has something to offer. And I feel like this work, especially right now, it might be easy for somebody to say, well, this is the last thing somebody might want to spend their money on, or there's so many other people that are already doing it, because that's what I said to myself, but there's nobody like you doing it. And so everybody has something to offer, and just kind of keeping that in the back of your mind, because if you're thinking about it, there's a reason you're thinking about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Wendy. I have thoroughly enjoyed what you shared about your story and experience and wisdom today. And again, congratulations on Coach of the Month. It is well deserved. And I'm glad we gave you a shock. And it's going to validate just this next level of identity evolution for you to say, yes, you've arrived, and there are more great adventures to come. So thank you so much for sharing today, and good luck with the next 5-year plan of living your dream life, and good luck with the time management aspect. Thanks so much for sharing that with us as well.
Thank you very much, Anna. I really appreciate it. It's been fun talking to you.
And you too, Wendy. Thanks so much.